Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on creating branch scenarios with Vyond and Storyline 360. My name is Matt and I'll be running the session for you today. So the focus of today's webinar is going to be around the use of Vyond and Storyline 360 to help us create branch scenarios for your e-learning. I'll quickly outline our agenda for today, which is going to focus on a couple of key areas. The first one is going to be around why branching scenarios. What are they? Why should you be considering them for your e-learning? And why do you require different tools such as Vyond and Storyline in order to make them happen? I'll also be showcasing a couple of examples of branching scenarios from a planning stage, and also showing us a couple of scenarios of branching scenarios in action as well. What we will then do for the remainder of the time is begin planning a scenario within Storyline with the use of Vyond videos as well. So you will be able to see a very simple overview of branching scenarios in action. So you can potentially then go away and start including them within your e-learning as well. We'll briefly touch on building in Vyond, as well as the development in Storyline and how you can very easily and quickly combine the two tools to create a really powerful piece of learning. If anyone watching this would like to learn a little bit more about Vyond and Storyline in detail, we do run other webinars on these tools as more of an overview. So please feel free to check out the Omniplex website or the Omniplex YouTube channel to identify more webinars and recordings that may be valuable in upskilling in both Vyond and Storyline, but they both will be referenced on today's webinar. Fantastic. So step one, why branching? And what are branch scenarios? So in the example you can see on screen on this slide here, a branch scenario is where you are putting a learner in a situation where they are presented with a challenge. The learner will be given a set of options or choices that they can make, and they need to apply the knowledge that they have learned about, or the knowledge they already have, to make a specific choice based on the challenge presented. What's fantastic, though, in a branch scenario is that you will provide different consequences based on the choice that they make. So in a standard assessment or quiz question, typically you'll be given the challenge in terms of a question and your choices, but the consequence will either be incorrect or correct. There will be a right or wrong answer. Now, what you'll see with branch scenarios is that you can create almost a story approach where the learner's journey will be affected by the choices that they make. So by selecting a certain option, they will see a certain consequence. Right or wrong, it will take them on a specific journey. Whereas picking another option will give them a different consequence and a different journey that they would go on again. So what this will allow you to do is present an opportunity to the learner to apply their knowledge in a much more interactive and journey-based environment compared to a traditional quiz or assessment that you might find in Articulate Storyline or another authoring tool. This setup within branch scenarios is typically known as the 3Cs model. So creating a challenge, giving the learner the options and choices, and then providing differing consequences based on the choices that are provided. And we will go into Storyline and show you the story view, so you'll get a feel for what this looks like in practice. But there is a very good sort of idea of what you'll be looking at in the picture to the right hand side of the slide. So branching scenarios in e-learning specifically, and again you may have seen these in adventure books or in other mediums. Branching scenarios in e-learnings are just a fantastic substitute for the more traditionally and potentially overused click, read and understand style of e-learning. So of course we want our content to be engaging, but there are only so many click to reveal bits of information that can be provided before giving them a standard summative style of assessment at the end of a course. A branch scenario is really going to mix this up and put a learner in a realistic experience that they may have following on from the training that they're taking. The next area of concern or consideration are the multiple advantages that branch scenarios in e-learning bring, because as well as diverting away from some of the more traditional ways of presenting and applying knowledge as a learner, they really do boost interactivity and engagement with learners as well, because you're able to develop their critical thinking and give them opportunities where they can actually apply the knowledge that they've learned either earlier in that course or in other aspects of their role and training. You're much more likely to get the buy-in you're looking for and the desired effects and objectives achieved. What's fantastic about branch scenarios is they are still a form of assessment, so you are able to give immediate feedback. So if they go down a particular journey that maybe wouldn't be correct in the way you want them to learn, or what they would need to be doing moving forward, you're able to guide them and show them examples of the proper process or the correct journey or choice that they should have made. What this should effectively allow you to do as an admin and as a creator is give the learners the ability to learn without fear of making mistakes, because it's not going to be as hard rooted as a yes, no, incorrect or correct. What it will allow the learner to do, if built correctly and effectively, is give them the ability to explore all of the different choices and all of the different consequences, so they can understand what does work, but equally get a strong understanding of what wouldn't be successful or what wouldn't be the right choice or consequence to face when given that challenge outside of the e-learning. What this challenges the learner to do is to take ownership of their decisions. So there will be a direct consequence of the decision that they make in this training, and that's something that typically e-learning doesn't put the learner in that position. It's very much more about providing support and providing knowledge around a certain topic and not getting them to apply it, sometimes even in the quiz at the end. Branch scenarios really allow you to put the focus on the learner and allow them to take ownership for decisions that they feel like they would actually make when presented with that particular challenge. And of course, the final benefit and recommendation we have for including branch scenarios is it enables learners to put theoretical knowledge into practical perspective. So it's one thing learning from text or from a video, but then being able to aptly apply it in a real life scenario is going to help take that knowledge that they learned on a theoretical level and apply it in a practical format. So you've learned a little bit now about what branch scenarios are and some of the advantages as to why you may want to be considering them in your e-learning. We've got a very simple example up on screen at the moment where you've got your challenge in the starting slide, 3 choices and different consequences based on what they provide. What I'd like to show you now is actually an example of the planning that goes into a branch scenario, because as you can imagine, this is going to differ massively in the look and feel to a linear style presentation course that I'm sure a number of you are familiar with creating and taking. Because a branch scenario is very much a journey and there are multiple journeys that a learner could go on, you definitely need to be thinking about how you plan and create your branch scenarios. So if I show you this example that's been created here, you can see the title, Planning is Key. And the reason for this is because you will end up creating a large quantity of slides to account for all of the different choices and consequences as they would be required. So you can see this narrative map that's been created as a plan for a piece of e-learning. And you can see what will happen when you start on the left-hand side with the first decision you make, and what decision you decide, what choices you decide to make will affect the different journeys that you go on. So this is not something that we would typically recommend going straight into an authoring tool like Storyline and building from scratch. you will need to plan for this so you can account for all the different journeys and make sure that you're providing enough options to keep the learner engaged, and also make sure that the course can be navigated correctly, because it's going to differ massively from a linear style course that you might come to expect in PowerPoint or other presentation tools as such. And there are so many examples of great branch scenario mind maps or planning maps online on the community page at eLearning Heroes for Articulate. So please do research into the different styles of narrative maps, but a simple plan or flow diagram like this should be sufficient for you to get a good idea and a good basis for a very, a bigger branch scenario based story or piece of content. But as you'll see in the example that we'll touch on in a moment, you can create branch scenarios very simply by applying the 3Cs model that we touched on a little bit earlier. What we're going to do now is jump into Storyline and show you a completed version of a scenario that we will then go into Vyond and Storyline to show and highlight the content that's been created. So we'll just move over to Storyline now. So we're now find ourselves in Articulate Storyline, and this is a complete example of a very simple branched scenario. So what you're going to see, and I'll preview this project in its entirety, is a learner who's going to be put into a decision about what they would do in a certain scenario. And based on the decision they make, you will see the different consequences. So we referenced the 3Cs model earlier. And as you can see, this is what it should look like within Storyline. We've got our first slide here, which, as you'll see, will be our challenge. And what that challenge will lead to is a set of 3 choices that the learner can make. And depending on what choice they go with, you will see the different consequences that will play out from there. So again, this is the 3Cs model in Storyline, and hopefully something you guys will be able to replicate relatively easily once you have started. What you will see in this preview, though, is a mixture of Storyline and Vyond videos that have been built in as part of this piece of content. So what I'll do is I'll preview this entire project from the start, and you will see the scenario that our learner is put in. And it's all about fire safety in the home, and there will be a little bit of computer noise as well that you should hopefully be able to hear. So, like I said, all about fire safety, and what we're about to receive now is our challenge and the choices that we're going to be able to make. So the challenge is the fire alarm is going off in John's house. What should John do next? And these are the 3 different choices. So as I touched on earlier, it is a form of assessment, but with differing answers that will provide a varied consequence and a varied journey for the learner. So you can see the 3 options. You've got try and put the fire out yourself, go and investigate the fire, ignore it. It could be the smoke from cooking earlier. So by picking any one of these 3 options, you will be able to see how it will affect the story and how it will affect the journey that you go on. So we will go for ignore it. It could be smoke from cooking earlier. And what you'll see is John leave the house, go do some shopping, and unfortunately come back to see that his house is on fire. What it will provide you with is then feedback, and if you have built your course correctly, and we can touch on this a little bit later with the build part of this demonstration, you will be able to reroute your learner so they can go and see what would happen if they'd gone through the correct option. So you can see, let's see what happens if you go and investigate the fire first. So if we click continue, what it will actually do is take us to the correct process that we'd want to go through in the correct journey. So you can see an incorrect element and a correct section as well. So you can see this was the right decision to make. Always go and investigate the nature of the fire. Well done. So Of course, this is just one potential branch of the branch scenario, but you can see this structure is going to be very common in Storyline if you are looking to build out branch scenarios. So you've got your challenge at the start, you've got your choices, and then you have your 3 different consequences. And like I said, this has all been built in Storyline in terms of the structure. But when we go into one of these slides, if we go into our challenge, you will see that we have a video that is taking up the whole screen. So this is a Vyond video that's been imported. And then we have a layer that pops up that sits on top of the video that comes in with the question. So the fire alarm in John's house is going off. What should John do next? So you can see, very, very simple slide. We have on our base layer, we have a video that's been created in Vyond, and then we have a layer that pops up with the storyline element and the question that gets asked. When you're within Story View, you can now also see the correct triggers that we've got set up based on what happens with the layer. So the key element here is making sure that your triggers are set up on the layer, which is where the question is set. And very simple trigger setup here. You're just making sure that whatever answer they choose, they're directed to the relevant choice, or the relevant consequence, I should say, the relevant consequence slide from there. So instead of it just going to a next slide, depending on which answer they give on the layer, they will jump to a particular slide based off that decision. So hopefully you can see, and we will go out and build an example on this. Hopefully you will be able to see just how simple it can be to create simple branching effects and a branch scenario within Storyline. What I'd first like to do is just go and show how you can very quickly create and provide and publish these videos from Vyond. So we're now in Vyond, the animation creation tool, and as you can see, we have got the 4 separate scenarios, the challenge element, and the 3 options or 3 consequences that will occur once this has been completed. And what I would recommend is that for each scenario, if you are looking to use Vyond, you build out a separate video. And these don't need to be long videos. Like I said, you don't want to, if you've got a lot of information to provide, you can build a lot of content and longer videos within Vyond. You see with these examples here, we have got an 8-second video, 6 seconds, and 2 12-second videos. And what we have gone is using a template and using John. If I just hover across these examples, you can see the scenario play out. Now, we're not going to spend our time actually building this content in Vyond, but it's worth noting, if you are going to build Vyond content for branch scenarios, that you separate out each video for each scenario. So it's much easier to put into Storyline, and you can separate them into different slides. Now, when you've got content that you're happy with, and 4 small videos like this, the way that you publish them and get them ready for importing into Storyline is by going onto your action, going into your more options section, and you've got the ability to generate the video in full HD or in high definition. You've also got the ability to generate it as a GIF, but we don't want to play it on a loop. We just want the video to play through once. So your best option is to generate the video in high definition or in full high definition, so you are able to import it into Storyline as an MP4 file. What we're going to do now is go into Storyline and get an incomplete version of the scenario that we've just gone through. So we can actually import these videos and show how you can create the triggers to link all of the scenario and consequence slides together. So what we're going to do now is jump back into Storyline. So we're now back into Storyline, but what you'll find is that we've now set up and got an incomplete version of the branch scenarios that we have created. So you can see that we've got slide 1.3 where we need to embed our Vyond video. So the way we're going to do that, and what we've done is, as you've just seen, go into the Vyond account and download the video as a MP4 file in high definition as well. So what we'll do is we will jump into the slide. Now, what we need to do here is insert our video. So one thing that you need to make sure that you are doing is ensuring that your slide parameters, your slide dimensions are set up best for video content. Because for some of you that are experienced with Storyline, you may note this is not the standard slide size that comes when you're building a piece of content in Storyline from scratch. So the best way to customize this when you're going into a new course is going into going into design and going into story size setup. And if you're including Vyond content, you want to make sure that you are in the 16:9 setting, which is the best setup for video content that's been published by Vyond and a number of other video-based software. The standard that you will typically find your account set up in is 4:3, but the 16:9 setup is going to be best for Vyond content. And you've got the ability to set a custom story size if you would like. And the reason for this is when you've got it set up and you insert the video, which I've downloaded and now have available to put in. I'll go to video in our insert ribbon, video from file. We can find the puts out fire himself video, and we can insert that into the tool. And as you can see, it will fill up the whole slide and will play out now as part of the consequence. So what will now occur is when the user makes their choice, so if the learner will go for try and put out the fire yourself, it can't be that bad, they'll be taken to slide 1.3 via the trigger that's been created. And now when 1.3 starts, the video as standard will automatically play. You can, when you've got a video in, you can change via the video options whether you want it to play automatically or whether you want to control it so the learner will click to play the video, or when a trigger goes off to start the video playing. You've got a couple of options within the video editing section that are worth knowing. But we will keep it as standard. We want it to play automatically when the learner comes in. So we can now preview this and practice it. So we'll go into our course. We'll go preview entire project. Fire safety in the home. We'll quickly work our way through this. The fire alarm in John's house is going off. What should John do next? We'll go for the option that we've just created the video for. Try and put the fire out yourself. It can't be that hard. It will then go straight to that slide and the video will start playing. Now, what you can see is that we've now, as part of the Vyond video, we've created this white box to appear within the Vyond video. Now in Storyline, we need to add in the feedback. One thing you should also note is we've got the player that's typical with Storyline and built into the tool. Because we've got navigation built into our slides, we actually want to remove the previous and next buttons. And this can be done on every slide using the little cog in the bottom right-hand corner to remove the previous and next buttons. So, like I said, at the end of the video, when the video is playing, you can see that a white box appears. So what we want to occur is at the end of this video, we want our layer to appear. So you can see that we've got new layer, and that's what we'll set up. The layer will sit on top of the video. And what we want to do is get the layer set up with the correct text, and also then a trigger to get set up to direct the learner back to the correct option, because this is one of the incorrect elements or one of the incorrect journeys that have been created. So what we want to ensure is that the learner is guided back to the correct journey so they can see how they should have answered. So what we're going to do quickly is actually check one of the other incorrect answers, because you can see that when we had leaves house, there's an untitled layer here that we will be able to use. So what we'll do is we will take the example text that's been created. You can say, oops, that was the wrong answer. Let's see what happens if you go and investigate the fire first. So what we'll do is we will insert a text box. We'll add that in here, and we can then add in the text that has been provided to us. Oops, that was the wrong answer. You should never leave your house whilst the fire alarm is going off. It was obviously relevant to slide 1.5, so we will just remove that to make it a nice simple message. Say, oops, that was the wrong answer. Let's see what happens if you go and investigate the fire first. Now, what we want to do is also create a continue button, because what you want to do is actually direct them to the correct journey that they go through. So you can see that we've got this button here. If we can copy that and bring it into this slide, and you can see because we've copied it, it also pulls through the button as well. So what we've got now is our layer that will pop up when the learner gets to the end of the video, but this has not been set up yet. So what we need to do at the on our baseline, our base slide, I should say, is set up a new trigger that says, just pull this across for visibility, you want the layer to appear, so show layer, our untitled layer 1 there, and we want it to be when the timeline, because it's a timeline event because we've got a video, when the timeline ends on this slide. So what this will do is set up the trigger that says the layer of text and the button will appear when the timeline ends. And when the timeline ends, what you'll see at the end of this course is, and if we just move the playhead along, we can test this. Lovely. And you can see that our white box is actually on the left-hand side. So what we'll do is we'll take our content and we will move it over to the left-hand side. So that what will occur on this slide is when we preview it, and we'll just preview this slide, the video will play through. When the timeline finishes, the text will appear. And now we've got a button that the learner can interact with, which will take them to the correct journey. So again, just to recap, this is an example of a branch scenario within Storyline that incorporates Vyond video using the use of layers, but with the 3Cs model, you guys will be able to begin developing really effective branching scenarios that you will be able to incorporate and start testing and challenging your learners to start applying knowledge. Like I said, we have a number of other webinars based on Storyline and Vyond in more depth. So if these look like tools that you want to start adding to your e-learning arsenal, please do check out the Omniplex website, the webinars page, or our YouTube channel for other webinar recordings on these tools. And I am sure that you will find hopefully a combination of the two tools, but authoring tools and video tools that are going to be a great fit for you and your organization. What I'll quickly do is just bring up the final slide of our presentation, which will give you really helpful contact details for reaching out to myself, reaching out to our wider team. Please ring through or send an email through to help@omniplex.co, and we will be more than happy to help answer any questions you have about Storyline, about Vyond, and about branching scenarios. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope this has been beneficial for you. Bye-bye.